Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, where I'm very happy to have Kathryn Kemp Guylay here, who is the author of Mountain Mantras. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
It's a
pleasure to be here, and it's also a pleasure to be in Park City.
Yeah, it's pretty nice up here, isn't it?
Oh, we got
Especially
a little bit of
snow.
A little powder.
Yeah,
my son's
kind of
already
ideal.
awake. Like, when can we hit the lifts?
Is that right?
Yeah.
You're like, as soon as we're done with the Mountain Morning Show. That's what we tell everybody.
Exactly.
You know, it's about the time the lifts open, so it's ideal.
Yeah.
But anyway, thrilled to have you here. It's terrific. So tell me a little bit about the book. Let's start there.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my background, because
Okay.
it kind of leads into the book. So I call myself a recovering management consultant. So I used to work for Fortune 500 companies back in the 90s, you know, AT&Ts of the world,
Sure.
IBMs, Motorola, you know, kind of working with CEOs and leaders. And then I switched careers and I started a nonprofit organization all about wellness, working with children and families to improve their nutrition and wellness.
Excellent.
And then our family, this is another huge change, moved from Chicago to Sun Valley.
Oh, wow.
So if you look at the cover of the
That's
book,
a lot of difference.
Yeah, that's a beautiful Sun Valley, beautiful just like
Yeah.
Park City.
Big fan of Sun Valley.
You know what was so interesting about moving to Sun Valley is that I was not a skier.
Oh, so this was, a shift to a place where, unless you're a skier, it's not going to be a lot of fun.
Well, you know what it was? It was a great practice in overcoming fear.
Sure.
And what it really taught me was, okay, what does having a background in management consulting have to do with having a background as a nonprofit leader, being a mom, you know, starting new things, and then becoming an author and a speaker? Guess what? Skiing helped me put it all together, because when you learn how to ski as an adult, you actually have to intellectualize it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have to say things like, plant your poles, set my goals, and
I like that.
throw yourself down the mountain. You can't sit on the back of your skis or you're going to accelerate
Oh,
and crash.
I
But I'm thinking about this and I'm going, wait a minute, this is commitment. This is full engagement.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was this wonderful practice and kind of putting together what CEOs were doing, what I was doing in nonprofit management, what athletes are doing every day. And just like here in Park City, in Sun Valley, we have this high density of incredible athletes. So I started interviewing Olympic athletes to just figure out what made them tick.
Wow.
And I found out a lot of the things that I saw with successful CEOs were the same in athletes. However, in many ways, the athletes are ahead.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I'm intrigued to hear why that is.
Yes.
All right, so you found practical ways to apply both. Talk to me about this, because it looks like we have an exercise in that too, a little bit here. When you really break it down, you seriously break it down. Chelsea's a big fan of the chocolate, so this is kind of ideal. Talk to me about how this fits in a little bit.
Right. Well, and I wear a smiley face, and I'm going to give you one too.
There's one in your backpack.
Yeah,
and
I do have a smiley face backpack.
Okay.
So one of the things that I learned, and this I learned early on in consulting, but I didn't really process it until I was learning how to ski, until I interviewed these elite athletes.
Right.
Positivity, approaching things with a positive attitude is so important.
And in this world now, people don't do it nearly as often as we used to, I think.
Well,
Have you noticed that?
It's hard. I mean, we are bombarded with, well, first of all, being plugged in all the time can kind of give us a lot of bad news around the world.
Agreed.
And then, you know, when you're going into meetings, if you're bringing that baggage with you, it tends to reflect. And so what I learned in talking with athletes is it's all about the mind game. It is a mental practice as much as it is a physical practice. And Liz Steven is a Park City local, and she was telling me about how they do the Superwoman pose. I'll stand up and show you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you can stand up too if you like too.
Let's get a camera shot at that.
Okay,
so now we're just waist. Kevin's got us here.
Okay,
there we go. Okay.
So and this is highly studied.
Okay.
This is Amy Cuddy's work at Harvard University. She studied leaders, and actually she studied the animal kingdom as well. But Liz Steven and Jesse Diggins were watching, believe it or not, Grey's Anatomy one night.
Yeah.
And the surgeon, before he went into a very difficult surgery, stood like this, hands on hips, wide stance. This is a power pose. And they're like, why is he doing that?
Right.
And what they found out, they looked it up, and sure enough, Amy Cuddy's study showed, and we've been doing this for almost 30 seconds, our cortisol, our stress hormone, has gone down, and our testosterone, our strength chemical, has gone up. So cool. So Liz
like that.
Stevens started to do this before a race. How cool is that?
Just that little power pose. Just get it.
Yeah, so
it
power
started.
pose. So there's power pose,
I like this.
there's positivity.
Okay.
I have my smiley face on because I was actually at Weller Bookworks last night doing a study showing with everybody that was coming and visiting me, what makes you stronger versus weaker. And I was even testing on little kids and they're like, happy face, strong. Smile or unhappy face, weak, weird. And then they run off and tell their friends and more friends would come in. Hundreds and hundreds of people. I've done this on personally, where you just test their arm strength. Unhappy face, weak.
Really?
So positivity really affects how the world treats you back. And that's just, again, something that connects my days in, as an executive director with working with Fortune 500 companies. And then these elite athletes, they know that it's about a positive attitude.
Well, Liz Stevens is in our studio often, as is Keegan Randall, who was mentioned here as well. Yes. Great, no doubt, great athletes with a great sense of who they are, and I think that's that's a big part of this too. I mean, obviously, the power pose kind of leads us to that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
The knowledge of who you are.
Keegan has this incredible story. She said when she was 5 years old, she was watching the Winter Olympics as a 5-year-old. Yeah. And she looked at the TV and said, I'm going to do that. 76 games, same thing. So manifestation, right? That's what it's all about. We can manifest. So again, it kind of ties into this positivity. If we're thinking good thoughts, if we're thinking we can do it, we can. But if we're saying, oh, we can't do it, it's not going to be able to be overcome, we tend to have that happen. So manifestation is part of this. Yeah, sort of that self prophecy would kind of bring it to us. Absolutely. Yeah. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. Wow, this is fascinating. What is it as you've gone through this exercise for yourself? Because this was a little, I'm assuming a little bit of a slower burn than if I just read the book and get right to it. Talk to me about that process for you and what. I mean, obviously it was a little bit of an evolution, right? Definitely, yeah. So I set out thinking that the book was just going to be about positive psychology. Okay. And then as I started to look at it, then I started to think about, wow, there is so much of a stickiness factor around using the metaphor of skiing or snow sports to talk about success in life and wellness. So I started to actually think about these, and there was this one mantra that kept coming up, and it was what I was talking about before, about committing, throwing yourself down the mountain. So the first mantra is about positivity, and the last mantra is throwing yourself down the mountain. And that can sound risky. It can sound like, oh my gosh, what is Kathryn asking me to do? Right. But in between, it's about setting the right steps up so that it doesn't become risky, that it just becomes about achieving success. So the book truly was an evolution where it started out positive psychology. Then, okay, how do we get people to fully commit to both wellness and success? But it starts with foundation, then it goes into vision, it goes into goal setting, and then really important is to learn from mistakes. And I think snow sports teaches that very well. Oh, for sure. Well, as they say, if you're not falling, you're not learning. Right, exactly. So those are really the mantras kind of summarized. And it's just been so fun to hear that, skiers and snow sports enthusiasts, they love the book, but I get notes from people that say, this book helped me to learn how to go scuba diving for the first time. Really? Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Well applied to other areas in their lives. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to take a break. I want to come back and talk a little bit more, and we'll go into one of your mantras, your exercises, so to speak. I love games. Right after we come back. So we'll be back with more right here on the Mountain Morning Show in just a moment. Welcome back, and we are continuing our conversation with Kathryn Kemp Guylay, and the book again is Mountain Mantras. We've been having fun on the break talking about so many of these things that, frankly, we're always, at least I hope, we're always all challenged a little bit in our lives. Yes. And it can be in so many different areas. But I love throwing sports principles to things. I often find myself using baseball as a metaphor for so many business things. If you've got a strong team at the bat, that's great, but you got to have that defense, so you rely on the thing you're good at, so score some points while you're figuring out how to be a better defender. And kind of that's my way of looking at it. I've never thought of skiing this way,
but I love that you have because this is probably my favorite sport. So much better.
You know, and it is interesting. I figured somebody else would have already done it.
I know. I'm a little
because
surprised.
I've seen golf.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic book called Code of the West or Cowboy Ethics that looks at cowboy life as a metaphor for how you can be successful. And he actually looks at Wall Street folks and how if they were only to follow the cowboy ethics, you know, it's just sort of, so there are some
We'd
interesting.
be in a little better shape financially, I think.
There
That
you
were
go,
true.
right? And so there have been a lot of really cool metaphors. You know, you mentioned baseball.
Yeah.
I've seen basketball, golf, but I was
Golf's fun. That one, my favorite was if you take a bad shot, you don't shoot. You don't take another one. People do that all the time. You go and you hit where it landed. You've got to take responsibility for your bad shots.
There you go.
Like that
That's
one?
a good one.
Right?
I love it. I love it. It's also, I mean, and I think being able to apply sports, I think, gives a stickiness factor to these messages because people
Helps us
love
remember
sports.
them.
Yeah.
It helps us think about them a little more often, and in a less, I guess, overwhelming way. Right?
Yes,
Because we get overwhelmed by the minutiae of business, don't we?
Yes, and I do think that there are folks that, you know, might not read a leadership book. As much as I love Stephen Covey, you know, Jim Collins, you know, they might not want to sit down and read a leadership book. They might not also want to read a wellness book.
Okay.
So the idea behind this book was, hey, let's draw people in with the idea of snow sports because it is it's a happy time. You know, when
Right.
we're on the lifts, we're happy, we're excited to be out there. So bringing that in, but then kind of almost like sneaking in some wellness advice and sneaking in some leadership advice.
Does the soul, the I'm trying to think of the right word, the quiet, the thing that what makes skiing wonderful, I think sometimes when you're out in the trees or out on a run by yourself and it's quiet and reflective, or you're on that lift, does that find its way in here?
That is probably the foundation of the whole book. I mean, I see skiing, snow sports as anytime you're in nature is being moving meditation. I think we do our best work when we're out in nature. In fact, you know, as far as a leadership principle goes, when you are stuck, when you can't get a good idea, it's because you've been at your desk too long. Get up and do something.
I like that a lot.
We get our best ideas from nature, don't we? You know, people talk about the shower. It's not necessarily at your desk.
Okay, yeah, makes perfect sense. All right, so you're gonna talk to me about where you're going to be. We know you're going to be at Dolly's. Is that right?
Yes. I'm so excited to be at Dolly's tonight. So that will be from 6 to 7:30.
And then library tomorrow.
And the library tomorrow. Good après-ski time, so from 5 to 6, real short and
Kind of
sweet.
ideal. Yeah, that's great. And when you're there, you'll have these, right?
Yes, you know,
Talk to me about what they are.
You know, I try not to do anything if it's not fun, right?
Okay.
And, you know, again, I was talking about this book having a stickiness factor. Part of it is that I'm really trying to get people to laugh. And a lot of people have told me, I don't know if you've heard of Muffy Ritz up in Sun Valley. She was one of my beta readers. She said she laughed her way through the book.
Really?
So that creates sort of a stickiness factor. I usually am talking, you know, people are usually laughing at my expense. So I'm talking about, oh my gosh, I made this mistake, but this is what I learned. But I think storytelling really is how people connect with messages. And so I have a lot of different stories. And so I brought these cups, and these are examples of what people will see.
Tonight, yeah. Creative vision, learn from mistakes, overcome fear. I'm gonna pick, so you're picking from these.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fortune cookie.
Okay.
Which one did you
so
pick
to
from?
create a vision.
Oh, okay.
And I'll let you read this one to me, so because I'm not familiar.
Okay. So Busha is my grandmother, and so
Busha's 3 questions.
Her 3 questions. It's interesting. You know, we have to look around us for, you know, those family members and those friends that really kind of have that sage advice.
Okay.
And I went through a really hard time when I left management consulting and was starting a nonprofit, and I was at home with my kids for a while. I was just lost, and I went and saw my grandmother, and I asked her, you know, gosh, you know, I'm in a really tough spot. What should I do? And she asked me 3 questions, and she didn't want a response. It's the kind of like we were just talking about, moving meditation. She wanted to plant the seed, but then I needed to kind of, you know, let that seed germinate and then grow.
Find the answer on your own.
Exactly. So the 3 questions, and listeners can think about what those answers might be for themselves is, first of all, what are you passionate about? Like, what do you get up in the morning and go, I can't wait to go do this?
Okay.
So again, no need for an answer. Second is, what are your God-given gifts? Like, what are you really good at? And then the last thing is, what is a critical need in the world? And so at that time, I actually had not started my nonprofit Nuture, but I loved nutrition. I grew up running around the halls of the Chicago Medical School, bugging scientists. I've always loved nutrition. Second thing was, with my management background, or management consulting background, I was very organized. I love to communicate. I love to write. I love to speak. So how can I put that together with a critical need? Well, this was the time when all the studies were coming out on diabetes and the nutritionally related diseases. So I said, I want to create an organization that will teach people in a fun, actionable way how to cook, how to take care of their families, and how to be well, that doesn't come across at all as judgmental or blaming or anything negative. And so those questions started Nuture.
The one that you mentioned, your God-given talents, sometimes I think that's hard for people to realize what they have. That takes some reflection, I bet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't just instantly, because sometimes there's also this issue around, you know, we're inside the bottle and the label's on the outside, so it's tough for us to read it. So sometimes it helps to go and ask people, what do you think I'm good at? When you think about something that I'm good at, what do you think of?
And
ask people.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have just a moment left, so let's go for the big one. Let's go overcoming fears.
Okay, this is a great way to end the show.
The Avatar story.
Okay, so this is a story from Langley McNeil. So she's an X-Games skier, cross skier. And she told me, well, first of all, she said, Kathryn, fear is a good thing. Fear is an asset. And we all need to use fear. I think sometimes we go, oh, I'm afraid, I'm just not going to do that thing.
Right.
The things that we are afraid of, we actually should go do. And so what she said every time she started one of her races is that she was terrified. Okay. She would be in the gates and she'd be like, I don't want to do this. I mean, it many times literally said, you know, to the other 3 folks in the gates, I need to go back. Like, I can't do this. And what she would do, she came up with this exercise, and everybody has their own exercise for overcoming fear, but this is just to be a creative idea of showing you what you can do. So if you've seen the movie Avatar,
yes.
Okay, she would close her eyes, she would open them, and they would be glowing, as far as she was concerned. She was an avatar. And she would click in to her poles, into her equipment, into her skis and boots, just like they clicked in, you know, that neural connection that they made with their banshee so they could fly. Okay. And she was superhuman. And as soon as she did that, all the fear would just turn into adrenaline. And she knew it would help her. And she off.
Wow.
So be your own avatar. Be your own superhuman version of yourself. Do what you fear, but do it, again, with this positive psychology that I can do it.
The thing that you've mentioned that seems to be the overarching part, at least from the athletic part, is that focus of seeing yourself at your best, seeing yourself win, seeing yourself complete things and do, you know, overcome the fear and all of those. That seems to be the overarching thing, knowing that you can. Absolutely. And you know, if this book and my stories and meeting with people help them to go to the next level in their life, that's what I'm here to do. I'm on a mission. Well, you've got me, you kind of got me going on a mission now too. I wasn't planning on this morning, but it's Mountain Mantras, and I'm excited. Thank you so very much, Kathryn. Thank you. We'll see you over at Dolly's tonight, at the library tomorrow, and check out her book, Mountain Mantras. Thank you so very much. Thank you. We'll be back with more here on the Mountain Morning Show. We've got some video content actually to share with you, things that happened earlier this week.